The U.S. Postal Service is temporarily suspending the acceptance of the packages from China and Hong Kong.
And goddamn it, shut down the city! We are at war!
Stay right there. You want us to get back? So I've been waiting for this. Sorry.
A federal judge ruling against President Trump, deciding he cannot redefine the meaning of the 14th Amendment to exclude the children of undocumented and temporary status immigrants from birthright citizenship. The judge issuing a preliminary injunction blocking Trump's executive order. Trump signed the executive order to end birthright citizenship just hours into his second term as president.
Birthright. That's a big one.
So I want to bring in Elizabeth McCormick, a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and Cedric Layton, CNN military analyst and retired Air Force colonel. The question, of course, is just how could this have happened?
Well, I believe there's three things that happened. If it had just been one, it wouldn't have been an issue, but three different things happened. First of all, they only had a crew of 3. And if you're flying a visual flight plan in a crowded airspace like this, they really should have had 2 crew chiefs in the back of the helicopter to clear each side, as the pilots only have visibility from straight ahead 12 to 3 o'clock, or 12 from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock. So you only have visibility of the front 180 degrees. Your crew chiefs clear the back.
Looks like the U.S. Army recruiting had their most productive December in 15 years, enlisting 346 soldiers daily into the world's greatest army.
First up, a federal judge just blocked Trump's bold move to end birthright citizenship, but the real reason behind the ruling might just expose the left's biggest legal hypocrisy yet. Then, of course, the NTSB confirms a crucial error by a Black Hawk helicopter before a deadly plane crash, yet there's a major detail that they're not telling you guys about that could change everything about this case. And speaking of hypocrisy, Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, just put the DOJ and the FBI on blast for turning a blind eye to what she's calling a Democrat-led insurrection. Wait till you hear what they're trying to sweep under the rug here. Meanwhile, Trump's tariffs are shaking the world economy, but the biggest panic isn't coming from China. In fact, it's coming from a place that nobody expected. And finally, the Army just shattered recruiting records after Trump's election win. But this isn't just about more troops, guys. This is a massive shift in America's future that the media is desperate to ignore. So stick around, because the truth behind these stories, I'm about to drop these on you guys. If you haven't already, appreciate you guys hitting the like button. Thank you so much for subscribing and sharing this video. You guys are amazing. All right, so once again, activist judges are playing politics instead of interpreting the law. In yet another example of judicial overreach, the U.S. District Judge Deborah Boardman has issued a nationwide injunction against President Trump's attempt to put America first and end birthright citizenship for children of illegal immigrants. Instead of allowing a real debate on the meaning of the 14th Amendment, the judge resorted to an emotional rhetoric claiming that denying automatic citizenship to those who enter the country illegally would cause irreparable harm. So this ruling isn't about the Constitution. This is about the left's obsession with open borders and their refusal to enforce immigration laws. Trump's executive order challenged the long-held but highly questionable interpretation of the 14th Amendment, which was never intended to reward those who break America's laws with an instant claim to citizenship. Predictably, the judge dismissed Trump's argument without any kind of real serious considerations, parroting the exact same the same tired talking points about settled law and judicial precedent that benefits the Democratic Party's long game of flooding the country with new voters. So that's the big problem here, or one of the big problems. But let's be clear, guys. Birthright citizenship here, it's been an open invitation for abuse, creating incentives for illegal immigration and undermining American sovereignty. In fact, the idea that foreign nationals can just sneak across the border and just instantly claim citizenship for their children, this straight up just defies common sense, right? Yet you got the Democrats, their allies, in these judiciary roles refusing to acknowledge this obvious reality. Instead, they're framing any attempt to secure America's borders as cruel and unconstitutional, while conveniently ignoring how other developed nations have long since closed this loophole. Meanwhile, I mean, America, we're just sitting out here with this open loophole, and our justice system is not willing to do anything about it. Or I should say our Supreme Court is not willing to do anything about it. So this ruling it's a prime example of why Trump's no-nonsense, tough negotiation style, this is exactly what's needed to be able to fight back against a system that's clearly rigged in favor of illegal immigration. Now, unlike weak Republicans who cower in the face of liberal outrage, Trump's not backing down here. In fact, Trump's administration is already preparing an appeal, taking the fight all the way up to the Supreme Court if necessary. So the Democrats and their activist judges, they can try and delay the inevitable, but they're not going to stop Trump's determination in order to restore law and order. America doesn't owe citizenship to anybody who, especially, or specifically, it doesn't owe citizenship to anyone who's breaking the law in order to get here. And I think that this fight is far from over. In fact, President Trump, mind you, is set to make history as the first sitting president to attend the Super Bowl in person. And Kansas City Chiefs star Travis Kelce, he's calling it a great honor. But of course, the media and the left, they wouldn't let that be the story. Instead, they're focusing on the biggest football game of the year. They're desperately trying to turn it into yet another political circus, dragging Taylor Swift into the mix and rehashing her tired anti-Trump antics and endorsements. But Kelce, unlike the emotionally charged Democrats, he took the high road, acknowledging that having the president at the Super Bowl, this is a privilege regardless of politics. But let's be honest, guys. If Biden were attending instead, the media would probably be falling all over themselves to try and frame it as some grandiose unifying of America. Instead, they're scrambling to remind everybody that Swift, who has made a career out of liberal activism, once took a shot at Trump and recently endorsed Kamala Harris, a politician with historically low approval ratings, who can barely string a coherent policy argument together. But, and speaking of Biden, let's not forget that he refused to sit down for a Super Bowl interview twice, mind you. And this is a move that would have been framed as cowardly had it been Trump. You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, Trump is set to give a pregame interview with Fox, proving once again that he's not afraid to face the public and dominate the conversation. But the real question here is, why does the left always need to inject politics into everything, right? Super Bowl, this should be a game. This should be about the game, not a platform for another Hollywood elitist trying to sway voters. Yet Swift's presence will be treated like some grand political statement, while Trump's attendance is going to be met with predictable outrage from the same people who spent years falsely calling him a threat to democracy. At the end of the day, the real power move is basically Trump showing up here. The left, they can cry about it. The media, they can spin it. Swift, she can pout about it. But America, they're tuning in to watch a football game. They're not trying to tune in to watch another DNC rally disguised as a halftime show. By the way, you guys just now joining the live. Appreciate y'all being here. Thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing. So the NTSB's latest findings confirm what President Trump pointed out at the very beginning. And remember when Caitlin Collins, she was in the beginning, or she was in the front row at the White House, and she was asking Trump questions. She was like, isn't it a little bit too early to jump to conclusions when you don't even know the names of the victims on the American Airlines flight that during the Black Hawk crash? You don't even know the names of the passengers on the plane. How can you just assume that the Black Hawk was flying too high? Trump responded, well, I have common sense. And it turns out his common sense was pretty freaking accurate. The Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high and far above the 200-foot limit before its tragic collision with an American Airlines plane over Washington, D.C. And so this wasn't just some minor mistake. This was a critical error that cost 67 lives, including 3 Army soldiers. Yet, while Trump immediately called attention to the obvious issue, Democrats and bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., they played their usual games of deflection, focusing on vague investigations instead of addressing the clear facts. Now, the real question is, why this error happened in the first place? Was it pilot error? Was it a mechanical failure? A failure of the system itself? Well, the NTSB update leaves that particular bit of information unanswered. But one thing is very clear. Our air traffic control infrastructure is in dire need of reform. Even Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, despite being part of the Biden's administration, admitted that the FAA is working with antiquated systems and that their air traffic controller staffing has plummeted. But will the Democrats do anything about it? Unlikely. Their knee-jerk reaction is always the same. Blame external factors and push endless investigations that never come to any kind of conclusion. Avoid any kind of, taking responsibility for fixing broken systems. But Trump's leadership style, it's direct, it's decisive, and willing to call out the obvious. In fact, it's exactly what's needed in order to cut through Washington's red tape and prevent disasters like this from happening again. Instead of making excuses, his approach would actually focus on solutions, modernizing the FAA, fixing gaps in airspace monitoring, and ensuring military and civilian aviation safety protocols don't overlap in ways that create deadly risks. But of course, Democrats and bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., they're going to continue their endless panel inquiries and committee meetings. Meanwhile, the American public is left to wonder how such a catastrophic failure was even possible in the first place. So this tragedy it's not just about one helicopter that happened to fly too high. This is about a broken system that refuses to take action until it's just too late. And without strong leadership, history is bound to repeat itself. And of course, separately, Marjorie Taylor Greene just flipped the script on the Democrats, and they don't like it one bit. In fact, after years of smearing Trump and his supporters as insurrectionists for simply questioning the 2020 election and protesting on January 6th, Democrats are now openly calling for chaos themselves. New Jersey Democrat LaMonica McClever's outburst, quote, "God damn it, shut down the Senate. We are at war." This sounds an awful lot like a call for insurrection, but don't expect the DOJ or even the FBI to treat it that way. Marjorie Taylor Greene is right to put the heat on this Biden-controlled Justice Department and FBI, calling out their blatant double standard. If a Republican had made a comment like that, the media would be in full meltdown mode. And we would also be talking about some kind of congressional hearings and FBI raids and all this stuff, right? But since it's a Democrat shouting for the Senate to be shut down, well, the left just shrugs it off as passionate rhetoric. So the real reason for this Democratic meltdown, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOJ, is exposing just how bloated and corrupt Washington, D.C. really is, guys. The left is panicking because Elon Musk's advisory team, they gained essentially limited read-only access to Treasury systems and started cleaning up waste at USAID, or USAID, an agency long criticized for being a slush fund for global projects. And instead of debating the policy, Democrats resort to their usual hysterics, screaming about war and calling for procedural obstruction. Now, this is literally just the Democratic playbook. Accuse their opponents of crimes that they themselves are committing. We've seen it time and time again. It's nothing new, right? They spent years falsifying falsely claiming that Trump incited an insurrection, weaponizing the DOJ against his supporters, and jailing political dissidents. Yet, here they are openly calling for the Senate to be shut down in protest of a lawful policy decision. So Marjorie Taylor Greene's move to tag the DOJ and the FBI, it's a masterstroke, forcing them to either enforce the law equally or to expose their own corruption. Now, once again, Trump's direct, no-nonsense approach to governance is exposing the left for who they are: emotional, hypocritical, and desperate to hold on to their unchecked power. Now, the question now is, will the DOJ act? Or is it just going to be another example of Democrats getting away with the very behavior that they pretend to condemn? You know what I'm saying? Now, President Trump has said he has just sent a powerful message to the world. America is done being taken advantage of. In fact, his sweeping tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada, they prove once again that he is willing to do what weak career politicians never dared to do: put America first. No matter their noise from the Democratic elites or from the global elites, But as expected, the left is already melting down. They're crying about trade wars. They're ignoring the real war. The real war is the one that's being waged on American workers by cheap foreign labor, by bad trade deals. And let's not forget about fentanyl pouring across our borders. And let's get one thing straight here. China and its allies have been playing the U.S. like a fiddle for decades, flooding our markets with cheap goods, stealing American intellectual property, and turning a blind eye to the fentanyl crisis that's killing Americans in record numbers. Trump's tariffs finally hold them accountable. And predictably, Beijing is now scrambling to retaliate, even launching an antitrust probe into Google, an empty performative stunt that from a regime that essentially censors its own internet. The Democrats and their media allies, of course, they're doing their best to, well, they're doing what they do best, is just whine. They claim Trump's tariffs will hurt consumers. Meanwhile, they're ignoring the bigger picture where we're in a battle for economic sovereignty. And the same people who cheered Biden's reckless inflation driving spending, they now want us to believe that they suddenly care about prices going up. Please. Meanwhile, Canada and Mexico, they're throwing tantrums. They're slapping tariffs on American products, and they're whining about confusion. Maybe they should start trying to secure their borders and stop the flow of deadly drugs into the United States if they want better treatment. Well, Trump's leadership style, decisive, unapologetic, and tough, this is exactly what's needed to force these countries to the negotiating table. In fact, Trump's move to temporarily pause tariffs on Mexico while securing 10,000 troops at the border, this is a perfect example of how a real deal maker operates. Now, if we go ahead and contrast that with the Democrats' approach, endless talking, zero results, you know what I'm saying? And let's not forget about the hilarious flip-flops from the USPS, okay? Which first announced that it would be suspending package deliveries from China. Then they quickly caved and they reversed course. Why? Because bureaucrats are terrified of rocking the boat. Trump's tariffs are exposing how deeply entrenched China's influence is, even in something as basic as our postal system, guys. Democrats, they love to claim Trump's actions will cause pain, but what they really fear is that his tough stance will actually work, forcing China, Canada, and Mexico to play fair for the first time in decades, right? America has been paying the price for weak leadership for just way too long. Trump's tariffs, these are a necessary correction to years of economic surrender. Bottom line here, guys, while the media hyperventilates and the Democrats essentially, oh my God, they clutch their pearls, Trump is doing what nobody else had the guts or the balls to do. They're forcing a reckoning that's long overdue. And the question is whether these tariffs are actually going to work. Now, it's whether America is willing to fight for its economic future, or if we're going to cave for the same globalist nonsense that's put us in this mess in the first place. But President Trump's return to power is already making America stronger, and the numbers prove it. In fact, the U.S. Army just shattered record recruiting numbers, with December 2024 marking the best enlistment month in 15 years. Nearly 350 new soldiers signed up every single day. This is a clear sign that Americans are eager to serve under a president who actually believes in the greatness of the country that they're fighting for, guys. And so this is the power of the Trump leadership. While when America has a commander in chief who projects strength, patriotism, and a clear America first mission, people want to be a part of that. Under Biden, the military was bleeding recruits, struggling with woke policies and directionless leadership that made service look like a social experiment instead of a mission to defend the country. The Democrats, they spent years gutting morale, pushing diversity quotas over combat readiness, and pretending military service was just another government job. The result? The Army missed its 2023 recruitment goals by a massive 41,000 troops. Now the tide is turning, finally. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he hit the nail on the head when he said America's youth want to serve under a strong leader like Trump. They want to be part of a force that actually stands for something rather than one that just kind of bends over backwards to accommodate the latest social justice trend. Now, of course, right, the media and left-wing bureaucrats, they're going to try and downplay this recruitment boom, right? They'll pretend that it has nothing to do with Trump and everything to do with bureaucratic restructuring. But the reality is here, it's pretty obvious. When America has a leadership who inspires confidence, young men and women, they step up. Trump's unapologetic stance on national defense is proving far more effective at recruiting them than all of the Army's recruiting, enterprise reforms, and social media outreach campaigns combined. Bottom line, strong leadership attracts strong people. Trump has restored faith in the military, and Americans are responding in droves. Meanwhile, Democrats continue to wring their hands, confused about why their weak, identity-driven vision for the military never resonated with the people who are actually putting on the uniform. Anyway, guys, if you haven't already, hit the like button. If you appreciate the content, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for sharing this video. You guys are absolutely amazing. You should see some videos coming up here in just a second. Check those out right now, and we'll see you guys on the next one.